14-year-old Alaunna Raffield was found dead in her garage, a tragedy that authorities ruled a suicide. But unanswered questions and a troubling connection to social media led her family to file a wrongful death lawsuit, and they were just awarded millions of dollars. But their fight for criminal accountability is far from over. I'm going to be speaking with the family's attorney as we get to the bottom of this case. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. The family of Oklahoma teen girl Alaunna Raffield scored a major legal victory after a judge awarded them millions of dollars in a wrongful death lawsuit that was filed after she died in December of 2020. And this case has drawn attention from everywhere because there have been inconsistencies in the investigation. It's also about the actions of a man who was connected to Alaunna's social media account that was at the center of this lawsuit, and now has resulted in an $11.6 million judgment in favor of Alaunna's family. So what led to this lawsuit? Well, here's the background of the case in case you don't know it. On the morning of December 8th, 2020, 14-year-old Alaunna Raffield was discovered dead inside of her family's garage with a gunshot wound to her head. Alaunna's mother, Heather, and her stepfather, Kevin Williams, found this teen girl at around 6 in the morning. They immediately called 911. Her death was ruled a suicide, and the Prague Police Department closed the case. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation also never opened a formal investigation into Alaunna's death. And the family expressed concerns about this, but we're going to get to that a little bit more in a minute. This is a tough case. It's not an easy one. And look, we appreciate you guys coming to us as we cover it. And I know I always say this, but look, we wouldn't be able to continue to do this without the support that we get from you guys and also the support that we get from our sponsors. And I want to call out one incredible partner in particular right now, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Look, if you should get injured, you got to know your legal rights and whether you're entitled to compensation. Here is a firm with an incredible track record. I'm talking recent verdicts, $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philadelphia, $6.8 million in New York. All of these, mind you, considerably higher than the highest insurance offer. And even if your case isn't worth millions, Morgan & Morgan will fight for what you deserve. There's no upfront fee. The whole process can be done right from your smartphone. It's that simple. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar. Back to this lawsuit and how it came about. When it came to light that Alaunna Raffield apparently had a relationship with an 18-year-old man named Cody Baker, that's where things took a different turn. Because he later admitted to police that he had accessed Alaunna's social media accounts after she died. In fact, Law&Crime, we obtained a copy of the petition that the Raffield family filed in their wrongful death lawsuit, and the allegations against Baker, they're really troubling. And an investigation by the City of Prague Police revealed, quote, stalking behavior by Cody Baker, who was fixated on Alaunna Raffield as his one love that he would spend forever with. In the petition, there's also visual evidence of what seems to point to an obsession with Alaunna. It says evidence of the strength of Cody Baker's fixation upon Alaunna Raffield is found in Cody Baker's arm tattoo. The Roman numerals, and it lists it out, reference the date December 8th, 2020. And remember, this is the date that Alaunna was discovered dead. Now, a friend that police had interviewed told them Baker had admitted to sending inappropriate photos to Alaunna, but that he deleted those off of his phone. And police found these nude photos of an unidentified woman, and Baker admitted, or allegedly admitted in his own words, that he was worried about becoming a sex offender and the police was going to come looking for him soon. So Baker stated that there are photos that would get him in trouble due to him being 18 years old and AR being 14 years old. And there's also evidence in this petition of multiple cryptic messages from Alaunna's Snapchat account and anonymous accounts, but all after her death. And these include photos and posts which the family believes may have been attempts by Cody Baker to mislead investigators. And a couple examples of these are mentioned in the petition, one being an anonymous post to Instagram made by account Weasel the Goat, where the poster says, I stopped you twice but failed on the third. I thought you were done trying. I was sadly wrong. There's another example of communications coming from Alaunna's account, clearly, again, after her passing, this time on Snapchat, where the user mentions that she had cuts on her arms and wrists. And Baker actually admitted to having access to Alaunna's social media, particularly her Snapchat account, but he told police that, he only accessed her account to keep all the haters off of her Snapchat and get a few pictures of her because he missed her. And that was the subject of this lawsuit against Mr. Baker. And as we get into more details about the case and the investigation, I want to invite on a special guest. I want to bring on attorney Brandon Pierson, who has represented the Raffield family during the course of this. Brandon, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. So first of all, if you can explain to us, what was the suit about when it was filed in 2022, and why did the court rule this way with an $11.6 million judgment?
Jesse, thank you for having me on. I think it's important to put in context what kind of a lawsuit this is. This is civil in nature. So in a criminal case, you have beyond a reasonable doubt as your burden of proof. It's said to be anywhere from 85 to 95% beyond any reasonable doubt. It's obviously a higher burden to meet than a civil case. We can get into, why the criminal case went the way that it did, why the investigation went the way that it did, whether it's lack of budget appropriation or going with the wrong leads. It's been called a botched investigation by our own Oklahoma State legislature, who started the Alaunna Raffield Fund in her name as it relates to the amount of budget appropriation and training that the Prague Police and surrounding county sheriff's office had. We filed a civil case because justice comes in a lot of forms. Sometimes it comes in the form of a verdict. Sometimes it comes in the form of somebody having just a count in open court for what they did or what role that they played without actually getting criminal liability or some sort of punishment related to it. In this case, the civil standard is different than beyond a reasonable doubt. It's by preponderance of the evidence.
Right.
We're looking at what happened versus what didn't happen, what was more likely than not. And under a negligence standard for wrongful death, we're looking at duty, breach, causation, and damages, and the role that Cody Baker played in the death of Alaunna Raffield.
What is the theory? What role did he play in her death?
At minimum, he emotionally abused her, and at maximum, he played an actual physical role in her death. As far as specifics of what those allegations are that aren't contained in the petition, there is this investigation has never been officially closed. It is an ongoing investigation, and for those reasons, as far as the specifics of how he could have physically played a part in her death, we don't want to jeopardize the integrity of an ongoing investigation as it relates to those acts.
Sure, I'll go into that a little bit, and what you can and can't talk about, I completely understand. Why did the court rule in your favor, in the family's favor, and what do they make of $11.6 million?
Ultimately, whether it's a criminal or civil case, the first step in defending oneself in any sort of lawsuit is by showing up. While Cody or Mr. Baker played an initial role in the case by participating in the case and also being present at one deposition, he stopped showing up to court. And at that point, the Oklahoma courts are very clear about what they're allowed to award and what they're not. We actually spent a year, roughly October of 23 through September of 24, actuarially finding a model that the court would approve that's in compliance with Oklahoma law and Oklahoma standards for valuing the price of a life. Now, when we get, not to sound, in the name of avoiding hyperbole and a lot of the emotions that are involved in this case, that's actually a very particularized, objective process by evaluating a life. So once the court signed off on the model that we were using, it was then incumbent upon the respondent, in this case, and Mr. Baker, to defend or produce another model. He never did that. He never showed up. He stopped showing up. And on the day of the hearing, it was a day late and a dollar short, so to speak. The time to defend oneself had lapsed at that point.
So it was a default judgment. It was a default judgment entered by the court because he didn't do anything.
That's right.
How is the family reacting to $11.6 million? How does the family react to this?
Well, with the news coverage being the way that it was, and obviously losing your 14-year-old daughter, the family has become justifiably disconnected from this case. They've tried to move on. They're never going to get Alaunna back. And this is the one form of justice and criminal liability versus legal culpability. They've kind of taken a step back from this, and justifiably so. while they're encouraged, that we have some culpability associated with Mr. Baker, the reality of actually getting the money is an entirely separate can of worms. We have to, obviously, this will be hovering over Mr. Baker for the rest of his life. And that provides some sort, one particularized kind of relief for the family, but they're never going to get Alaunna back. And they've lost a sister and a daughter, and that's all they care about.
I was going to ask you, of course, that money cannot never replace a loved one. And that's in any wrongful death lawsuit. But also, I'll tell you, 11.6 million, unless I don't know too much about Mr. Baker or his family, maybe you can provide us a glimpse into that. But does he have that kind of money? Do you know how you would attempt to try to get that kind of money?
Well, I'm not sure that anybody in Lincoln County has access to that kind of money, just to a certain degree, as far as being able to pay back what one has done wrong in the form of a penalty. This amount of money will hopefully send a message to not only Mr. Baker and his family, but also the surrounding community that if law enforcement is either hamstrung or doesn't have the budget appropriation to make an investigation happen, that there are other standards, there are other ways by which that we can hold somebody responsible. Yeah, and hopefully this will have some sort of domino effect in that regard.
It's almost a symbolic win in a big way. I get it. I understand there's things you're limited in what you can speak about, but let me go through a little bit of this with you, and what you can share will be incredibly helpful. So it's my understanding that the Raffield family has expressed concerns about certain parts of this case and things that they felt just didn't line up. For one, the family reported that they never heard a gunshot, even though Alaunna was found dead in the garage. The gun was found several feet from Alaunna's body, and it was determined to have belonged to the family, but it was never positively linked to her death. And authorities also, they didn't conduct a gunpowder residue test on Alaunna's hands or head, and her clothing was tested after it had already been washed by a funeral home worker 3 times. Brandon, based on that, when I lay all that out, can you share how you or the family thinks maybe Alaunna died, or the deficits in this investigation, or why it was investigated this way?
Well, it truly is shrouded in a mystery, but I think you have to take a step back and put what happened on the day of Alaunna's death against the context of how Mr. Baker reacted in the outset and the days following, the months following those incidents. Normally, as a criminal defense attorney, something that we look at is somebody either comes forward, admits guilt or the role that they played, or it's inconsistent in some varying degree. What we found during the deposition that we took of Mr. Baker is that he would be remorseful in one question, and then 2 questions down, he would get angry, or he would want to, he felt that the pressure was coming on strong against him and that he would feel a need to explain himself. Not only is his alibi inconsistent and some of the facts related to the actual incident inconsistent, it's that Mr. Baker's never really taken a hard line approach or opinion or anything as it relates to what role he may have caused, whether it was a physical role or an emotional manipulation role. And I think what's clear through the transcripts of the deposition, which are public record, which every aspect of this case, frankly, is, and anyone with 2 eyes and ears and a little bit of common sense can see that this was a targeted manipulation of Alaunna Raffield from the moment that they began their relationship, and his conduct in the wake of her death was indicative of a defendant rather than a boyfriend that was mourning. It was covering the tracks rather than taking any measurable steps to protect the integrity of Alaunna's life or their relationship, or anything that would shed a positive light on Alaunna. Everything came back to protecting Cody.
Is that what you think the access to her social media accounts was about?
I got to be honest with you, Jesse. As I sit here at the ripe age of 37, I'm a little disconnected from the Snapchat, conduct of the world. Why teenagers do what they do these days. That being said, everything that we've been able to review about Alaunna's social media, the integrity of it has been compromised. I think objectively, as we sit here today, we can say that we were not able to answer those questions because Cody intended for us not to have the answer to those questions.
Let me ask you about, you mentioned alibis or you mentioned conflicting statements. So he admitted to having been in contact with Alaunna, but his story apparently changed about his whereabouts on the night of her death. It kind of became sketchy because according to police reports, he claimed that he was at his home in Shawnee, Oklahoma in the days before and after Alaunna's death. But then he seemed to later contradict his own story, where he stated that he went home at the end of the day to his house, and then he didn't return to Prague until December 13th, 2020. So this is what he first tells police, but then he's asked about a text message that an officer finds in his phone, and he gives a different answer where he apparently says, I discovered one message that stated Baker was in bed on a Monday on December 7th, 2020. I asked him where he was in bed at, and he stated he would have had to be at his grandparents' house in Prague. And shockingly, the investigation also revealed an instance of Baker allegedly discussing a staged suicide. So the report reads, the investigation revealed an instance of Cody Baker discussing a murder video deleted from his phone of a staged suicide, and also revealed a statement made to a minor female that Cody Baker has a friend in Shawnee that murders people and makes it look like an accident. And when police asked Baker about this murder video, he said a friend had sent it to him, that he would use it to make himself look strong, that he made it look like he has a backup. It's weird stuff here, Brandon. Can you shed some more light on this? And again, I think the $1 million question is, maybe the $11.6 million question is, why was this not looked at more thoroughly? Or would the police say they did look at it and nothing checked out and everything checked out?
Right. And over the course of an investigation, certain suspects will become a higher priority than others. And it's very important that people on my end of the spectrum in the legal field give law enforcement the freedom and the space to investigate a crime properly. That never occurred here. And it's from the outset of since the day of Alaunna's death, is that we have conflicting opinions. There was part of the open record is an affidavit submitted by a law enforcement official who is actually no longer affiliated, with this case. But the affidavit of Matthew Hensley goes into particularized detail about inconsistencies and Mr. Baker's alibi and his side of the story, his role that he played. And there was pretty much a universal opinion that he should be, treated as a high priority suspect in this case. And, as far as the details of why that didn't happen, I think that's the purpose of the Alaunna Raffield Fund coming before the Oklahoma State Legislature, to ensure that whether it's nepotism, which I know a lot of us like to believe that it's 2024 and that doesn't exist anymore. It is small town Oklahoma after a while. And I say that as a very proud Oklahoman. And this happens everywhere where a case goes sideways. The local law enforcement, cries a lack of budget appropriation or a lack of resources, and we'll never truly know these, like you said, the $1 million or $11 million questions, because the integrity of the investigation was compromised at minimum and fraudulent at maximum. And I use those words very carefully, with what we know about Cody's family's adopted family's ties to the community. This is an ongoing investigation, and there's a legitimate reason or reasons for that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, did Cody Baker also use 6 different aliases, like Cody Mullen, which he legally changed after Alaunna's death, and Cody Terrell?
Right.
Can you talk to us about that?
Right. Yeah, and I know my role in dealing with the complications of that is for service of process issues in a case like this. According to the Due Process Clause, somebody has to have proper notice in order to show up and advocate for their rights in open court. I don't know that I would use nebulous or nefarious to describe his conduct, but it surely was advantageous for him. Obviously comes from a foster family. He had one name then. He had one name during the service of process during this case. It's my understanding that he's going by a different name of Mullen now. Where that plays a role in the ongoing litigation, obviously on October 15th, I believe, a motion to vacate the default judgment was filed in Lincoln County. service of process is going to become a very big part of that case.
Right.
Because there is no merits for Cody to stand on. It's going to be procedural in nature. That he has a defense under not giving proper notice, or that he wasn't home. There's certain elements that have to be met in order for service of process to be effectuated properly. And he's likely going to claim that that didn't happen. Again, this is all coming back to the same narrative of a guy that's running from this, as opposed to doing what an innocent person would do, would just confront it head on. Certainly with your financial integrity for the rest of your natural life being on the table, and to just completely run from it and hide under rocks, that's commensurate with every aspect of Cody Baker's behavior from the outset of this incident.
Just going back to Alaunna, putting a bow on this, and I want you also to tell me about the Alaunna Raffield Fund and what that is, and if people are listening to this case and want to help the family in some way, please let them know. But just so we're understanding, when you speak with her family, your understanding, was Alaunna sad? Was she depressed? Did she give any kind of indication that she would have taken her own life, as we're trying to understand what happened to her? So, because I think that's the central question here, how unexpected this probably was for the family.
I have 2 young daughters myself that are 7 and 5. And the vulnerability associated with a 14-year-old, male or female, is that they're still in the process of developing. When you have somebody that comes in, whether it's 16, 18, 20, whatever it is, there's a reason why people with, men in particular, with propensities to manipulate or control, target the age of 13 to 16, and it's to do exactly what Mr. Baker was able to do. And he achieved what he was setting out to do, which was to control Alaunna, her behavior, her posts on social media, the friends that she hung out with, all of the aspects of day-to-day conduct, such that the family, to answer your question more directly, there was a stark change that occurred, one that is usually reserved more for the college-age years, where she was maturing rapidly. And she began to become very emotional, and their relationship wreaked havoc on her education, on her family life with her friends. And it is one thing that is clear throughout her review of the months and leading up to her death, was that there was a stark change in her behavior that occurred that can only be, logically related to when Cody Baker entered into the picture.
And the Alaunna Raffield Fund, talk to us more about that. And again, if people are interested in helping the family, supporting the family, what can they do?
When you start to look at a case like this, everyone tries to draw the yarn, so to speak, back to the sources of why an investigation would be botched. The first thing that gets reviewed by the Oklahoma State Legislature and by OSBI is the tangible resources that the jurisdiction had. What kind of training did the law enforcement officials have? Whether they were certified in an investigation of a juvenile. In every objective context, this case was ruled to be substandard. It was concluded that it was substandard by the Oklahoma State Legislature, to the point that they started the Alaunna Raffield Fund, which kind of delineates and separates some of these smaller jurisdictions and ensures that they have resources for training, especially in the Zoom age. There's aspects that we can of learning and developing smaller jurisdictions and making sure that they have the resources to be as efficient as possible. And I think where the Alaunna Raffield Fund comes in is, one, it provides a name that will live on, and that will forever be the story. Is that we won't know the answers because law enforcement did not have the resources available to them. And the hope is that, understanding of criminal cases, that the light that is shed, in this day and age in 2024, you can't hide from the internet. You can't hide from the power of, the voice of the people, the voice of the surrounding community. And I think that's one, if there is a silver lining that came out about her death, is that this fund has been established and it's going to ensure more resources towards smaller town jurisdictions.
Brandon Pierson, thank you so much for coming on, explaining the case, explaining the story to us, and also please send our best to Alaunna's family as well. I know this must be a difficult time. It's been probably an incredibly difficult time for them since Alaunna's death. But as we talked about, even this money doesn't, bring Alaunna back. So I imagine there's a lot of different emotions going on at this point. But please send them our best. And thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
I will absolutely do that, Jesse. It was a pleasure visiting with you today.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.